John, the customer says the brakes just don't feel right in this vehicle. I've got to agree, they kind of feel glazed over to me. So let's get this thing in Tech Garage and see what's going on.
Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Well, we got our Silverado up on the lift, and we took all the wheels off because you always want to do a visual inspection. Kind of looked around, didn't see anything obvious, you know. But Dave, we really need to focus on this disc brake system, and I could sure use your expertise, man. So,
well, as I look at this, first of all, I thought it might be glazing over. That's kind of when we were driving it. Maybe there was something on the surface of the rotor. There's not. So this appears to be normal. I looked up here, checked the hard brake line coming in is fine. Looks like the connection's good, and the soft brake line is down here. Now that has to be soft because the suspension, it needs to be able to move up and down, and this needs to be able to move with it. These soft lines are double lined, so sometimes it'll collapse on the inside, the inner liner, and you may not see that. But if it is collapsed, that means it would be pulling in this direction because the brake can't release. So we know that's not the problem, and this looks fine. And then also we have the ABS sensor here and the cable to it. Everything looks fine there as well. So from the visual inspection, just checking this out, I don't see anything that's wrong.
Well, Dave, I'm going to make things a little bit worse, okay? I got in here and I measured the pad, and we'll show it to you in the table a little bit later, but I'm measuring the pad right now, and I'm coming out with almost a brand new pad. So that's even weirder, I guess you could say, and no glazing like you said. Brand new pad. I mean, the pedal just doesn't feel right. I mean, I agree with them, but looking at it, you know, I don't see no big problems.
Well, once you yank these off, and I'm going to go get new rotors and calipers, and we'll see what's going on.
Yeah, we got it covered. Go with RockAuto.com. All right, so if you guys, let's go back to the base of brakes, man. Base brakes 101. That's the whole key there. I mean, let's talk a little bit about brake fundamentals and coefficient of friction, rotors and pads. So let's start right here. This is the rotor Dave was talking about. And on a disc brake system, the rotor spins around. Here's the actual caliper. This is called a floating caliper. The caliper actually squeezes and moves, and it contacts this rotor, and that's what the friction actually does, the stopping. Now, the friction creates heat, and when the heat has to be dissipated, you have to have a big rotor as a heat sink in order to do that. So spinning around, clamping, stopping, need good friction. You need a high coefficient of friction, and we'll talk about that right after the break. We'll look at that and see what's going on there. But let's take a couple of these brake components and break them down a little bit. So this is pretty cool. You've seen this a lot on Tech Garage. So if we're dealing with a floating caliper, this is a floating caliper. And what do I mean by a floating caliper is it moves. So I said when it contacts, it moves over to the left and to the right. So it's going to move on what's called these slides right here. So I'm a big advocate of doing brakes right. So make sure you pull these slides out. When you pull these slides out, clean them. Get you some good brake lube, put it on there, and make sure that those calipers are going to move. They got to move back and forth, all right? So that's one of the big things. This one, well, it seems to be moving fine. We're not hanging up. Dave mentioned the brake line. Nothing collapsed there because it's moving. It would be hanging up. Now, you have a sliding caliper. This is another one. Same thing, it moves, but it moves on these slides. So it moves back and forth on these slides to the left or right. And when it does that, see if I can move it. There it goes, sticking a little bit, needs to be lubed, but if it moves in and out, you want to clean these guides or slides right here, and you want to go ahead and lube it up with the brake part lube. Now let's take a look at some of the cool tools we got at RockAuto.com. Now these are brake caliper retractors, and depending on your caliper will depend on which one you use. This one's pretty neat. This one you can basically use on all of them. It just kind of goes in there and you ratchet it back, and when you ratchet it back, you push the pistons back. This spreads and opens up. Now, if you have a single caliper, you can use one like this that just goes over the single and pushes the piston back. But in our case, we have a double piston, so I would use the double piston caliper. And they're pretty cool because these pistons would be out in a brake situation. You just put that on over the bracket, and then you go ahead and push it. And when you push it, well, we'll take the bracket off so I can show you. Let me take the bracket off. Put that on right there. And when I put it on there, I start pumping it up. And what's happening is this mechanism's holding and the pressure is pushing the pistons back in nice and evenly so you don't do any damage to those pistons, all right? Now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and pull ours apart. So that's a really, really simple process. I got my brake clean, I got my lube, I got my trusty bungee cord, and I got a hanger for the caliper because you don't want to let it dangle from that brake line. That's going to do damage to that brake line and hose right here. That hose Dave talked about, you need to take good care of that. Super simple on this truck. You just come back here, pop a couple bolts, break them loose. And when I break them loose, I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 bolts out. And like I said earlier, this is actually a floating caliper. It's moving back on these slides right here. So I got that one out. You can see it moves a little bit. The slides, we'll take them out and lube them. I'll probably send Dave back over here to put this thing back together. He does a phenomenal job when it comes to brake work. Sometimes it's good to have those patients like he has. Come through here and pop that off. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the caliper off, and I can support it. I'll get my bungee cord or a hook or something, and I'll support it up there. But oh my goodness. Ha! I found the problem. You don't want to miss this. Stick around. I'm going to show you what's going on with this Silverado right after this break.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping, and by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
This is Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com. Now, last segment, we got the brakes off our Silverado. John, you took a look at it. You found something, but you haven't told us what it was. What'd you find?
Dave, the mystery is solved, man. This is incredible. I have never seen this. Been doing this for almost 30 years now. This is wild. I'm just going to pick it up and show you guys what we saw when we were looking down on the car. That's the cool part. Dave, if you give me a hand,
yeah.
We got our gauge here.
Okay.
We were measuring the pad, and just like that, look at that.
In the green, that's brand new.
That's a brand new pad.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It is a brand new pad.
All right.
Or is it?
Like a drum roll's needed here.
Look at that, Dave. What do you think of that mess?
Oh my goodness. That is supposed to all be worn all the way across. So if you look at that, that's standing proud of the rest of it, so that means the whole thing's not contacting it. So this is either the wrong pad or that's the wrong size rotor.
You've been doing this for a while?
Well,
absolutely. Look at this.
They're not matching.
I mean, no, they're not matching. And, you know, we had to figure that out. We didn't have this at the time. So really cool. We went to rockauto.com and take a look at this graphic right here. Under their info section, they actually have the specifications for the rotor of this truck, which was nice. We got to looking down here, and it says 12.992, which is a 13-inch rotor. All right, so we got a tape measure out, and we pulled a tape measure. And when we pulled a tape measure on this rotor, we're at about 12 inches, actually 11.99. Too small.
Detective John.
RockAuto.com, 13 inches, absolutely perfect.
That's crazy.
Pad, absolutely perfect. Thickness, absolutely perfect. That's that coefficient of friction, man, that sandpaper and ice. We were only getting about 3/4 here. That's a huge difference, isn't it, Dave?
And that's what we need to see, the whole thing actually riding on the rotor like that.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Both wheels have the problem. You're gonna have to do a whole brake job, man. Let's just do it right. We got rockauto.com on board, Dave, and you can do this.
Now we've solved the problem. This will make it easy. Thanks, John.
Absolutely. You know, if you're ever doing front brakes and they're disc brakes, you may have drum brakes. Older cars have drum brakes and some do. Our truck does as well. Well, what you want to do is you want to service the rears while you're doing it. And that's super easy to do. Just take your drum off. Sometimes you got to put some penetrating oil on it. Sometimes you got to hit it. The drum may be hard to get off, but once you get it off, you want to clean them up and adjust them. So you just pull it off pretty simple. Come over here, take some sandpaper, sand down the shoes a little bit. Once you sand down the shoes a little bit, make sure that the wheel cylinder's not leaking. Spray it with some brake clean, clean it off, and then lube the slides. 1, 2, 3 places. Readjust it, bring it up so it has a slight drag, put it back together, and make sure all the brakes are in tip-top shape. That's what Dave's doing over there right now. He's reassembling the Silverado. But you don't want to go far, because when we come back, we're going to reveal that van interior, man, on our Keep It or Crush It segment. See you there.
This is Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, and this is a segment we like to call Keep It or Crush It. Unfortunately, Josh didn't get to get the sledgehammer out for this Nissan. We have decided to keep it. Last week, we showed you how we replaced the radiator with a donor radiator from another vehicle. That wasn't too bad. That was really the only mechanical problem. Now, the interior, Josh, a whole different story on this thing. Clearly, this vehicle is an 07. It was well loved for a number of years and lived in by a family of slobs.
Yeah.
Probably a beautiful family though.
Well, they got good use out of the vehicle. This thing was super nasty when we looked inside. But then we started to look inside that donor vehicle, and we decided that might be the way to go. We just took the interior from that and brought it over to this Nissan. So the seats were where we started. They can be kind of intimidating, at least it appears that way, but it's really not that complicated, Josh.
Right, once the trim is taken off the front, really it's just a matter of getting to the bolts. And the trim is one of those things you want to be careful with. It can be frustrating with trying to get to the tabs, but you definitely want the trim back on there to keep it looking nice. You rip a tab, and that's not going to be a happy day when you can't get it back on.
Right, and the trim sometimes is hard to replace, so you want to make sure you preserve the old trim on the vehicle. Once it comes to actually removing the seat, though, just a few bolts there, Josh.
Yeah, just 2 in the front, 2 in the rear. It seems like you said, seats can be intimidating. They look big, bulky, and heavy, but just take out the 2 in the front, 2 in the back. You want to be concerned about the electrical connectors. Sometimes you have an airbag connector there that goes into the seat, so you want to be careful with that. It's going to be bright yellow if you have that. We didn't have that. We just disconnected those and then took the 4 bolts out. Wasn't nothing to it.
So the only reason we had electrical connections there is because we had the seatbelt detectors, just for the alarm for the seatbelt, and also for weight in the passenger seat to let us know if somebody needed to fasten their seatbelt.
Once we had those disconnected, just went ahead and took out the 2 front bolts, the 2 rear bolts, and nothing left but to pull the seat out.
And that was for the front row. Then moving on to those captain's chairs in the second row.
Right, so there's just a little bit of trim work there. It had these little fancy curtains, but also there's like a shock absorber type thing. Looks just like a hood strut. In fact, that's exactly what it is. Just pull the little tab at the top and bottom, and that pops right off.
And that's the shock that enables the seat to flip up to give you more storage
Just gives
space?
it a little spring to pull the seat forward.
Gotcha. And then just some bolts there on the rear seats as well.
Right, you had to take that shock off to be able to get to the bolt to be able to take that seat out.
On to the third row. Lucky enough to have a third row in this vehicle. And that was simple because there were no electrical connections there.
Right, it's just a spring to pop off, a couple bolts on the side, but with me and Benjamin were able to kind of wiggle that thing out and remove that seat once we got those bolts out.
And once we got those bolts out and got that seat out, we found an empty van, and we started to look at this donor van and realize, hey, the carpet's even really good on this. Now, we ordered new carpet from rockauto.com. That came from Auto Custom Carpets, ACC. That's really good. We had that in case we needed it, but we started to think maybe we can salvage this donor carpet and put it in the new vehicle as well. So we proceeded to remove that.
Right, now that all the seats are out, that's really like everything that's holding this carpet down. It's really slid up under a couple other little trim pieces. So really all that's left is just to take out a couple seals and start pulling that carpet out.
And the carpet's in 2 sections in this particular vehicle.
Right, so the first thing we did was just pull it out from the front, up underneath the air conditioning control console up there, just snugged it out, pulled it out, and me and Benjamin were able to work it out and got that first half removed. All that was left is the rear half.
Now take a look at this. This is the old seats from the nasty van and the donor seats next to it. And take a look at the difference there. We really upgraded this thing. And with the seats out in both vehicles, we finally got to look at the carpet underneath the van that we were flipping there, and Josh, we needed tetanus shots, I think, just to take that out.
Pretty nasty. So we went ahead and removed the carpet out of that van. It's still nasty under there, so we went ahead and vacuumed out all the trash that was even under the carpet, so we could put the carpet from the donor vehicle in.
And we reversed the process on everything from the carpet, then onto the seats in reverse order, and finally installed everything. Once we got that interior in, everything looked great. Now onto one little creature comfort, but it's actually pretty cool here. We got a new remote from rockauto.com, and we had to program that.
Right. There was really nothing to it. We just followed the procedure on the instruction outline that actually came with the remote.
And now that we have the new key fob, Josh, it's going to make it easy to open it up and do the big reveal here. Unlock it, and we will
There it is.
Check out the interior. Oh my goodness. What a transformation compared to the vehicle the way it was. And right down to the carpet, which, by the way, is still the donor carpet.
Right.
We have the carpet, as I mentioned, from rockauto.com. The farther we've gotten into this project, Josh, I know you've been thinking about keeping this for your family. You've got 87 or 88 kids, and
I love every one of them.
And extra carpet might be the thing you need down the road, so maybe we can hold on to that.
If you get some carpet mats to put on top of this, that'd be nice.
Excellent. That'll preserve it and make it last even longer. Well, this has been an amazing transformation. We hope to bring you another one next week as we look at our Ford F-250 and decide whether we're going to keep it or
crush it.
That's right. I suspect we're going to keep that one. It's a pretty cool looking vehicle. We'll be right back with lots more Tech Garage presented by rockauto.com, so don't go anywhere.
Tech Garage, presented by RockAuto.com, is brought to you by AP Laser, leading the way. And by RockAuto.com, all the parts your car will ever need.
Now is the time on Tech Garage when we visit with Tom Taylor from RockAuto.com. Tom, earlier we showed the folks here, we found brakes on our Silverado. They looked fine from the edge. If you looked at it, the pads and the rotors look great. And we couldn't figure out why the owner was experiencing a lack of braking power. Well, check this out. Once we got it off here, we saw here on the pad, it didn't reach all the way around. We couldn't figure out what the deal was, why we had this uneven wear, until we went to RockAuto.com. And we were able to find a chart that you guys had on there with all the specs. And do you guys do that for everything on RockAuto.com?
Yeah, we try to, and this was for a truck, and General Motors makes trucks for all sorts of different applications for driving around the mall or four-wheeling or towing. So it's normal to have different brake options, and sometimes the only way you know which brake option your vehicle you got, especially if you bought it used, is to inspect it and measure it. And if you go to our info pages, you'll see the dimensions of the brake rotors. So you can actually say, oh, okay, well, I need a 13-inch, and this is a 12-inch, so it doesn't fit.
And so we found that, and lo and behold, once we got the new one, you can check it out. Indeed, we were running one that was 1 inch too small, and there was our problem. And thanks to Rock Auto, we solved the mystery now.
Well, yeah, the hub's the same that it bolts onto, but it's just a different diameter.
The great part about RockAuto.com is I don't have to figure out what I need when I'm doing a brake job.
Right, yeah, we have kits for many vehicles, so you can get just one part number. You get the rotor and the pads. You can get a whole set front and back with the brake shoes, brake pads, drums, rotors you need. Less likely to be surprised when you get halfway through the project and say, oh, wait, I need this also.
RockAuto.com takes the guesswork out of buying parts for your vehicle. They have all the parts your car will ever need. John Gardner and Josh Ellis are working over there. A couple of professors. We're bound to learn something here on Garage Ed.
Yep, this is Garage Ed. I'm not Ed, you Ed?
No, I'm Garage.
That makes me Ed?
Yeah.
Ed's actually for education. And boy, we got one of those. We started out with the AC cycle. We talked about thermostatic expansion valves, orifice tubes, compressors, and we made it all the way to the evaporator. What is it? Why do we have one? And what does it do? Well, take a look at it right here on the graphic. The evaporator is located inside the car. So what's happening, the compressor, once again, is pressurizing that refrigerant in a actual gas form. It goes around to the condenser, changes states to a liquid, all the way up to where it goes to the control vise, where it changes pressures. After it changes pressures, it goes to the evaporator, and that's where it actually needs to change back into a gas, and that's where it grabs the heat from inside the car, jumps on the refrigerant, and takes a ride back into the cycle. Now, where is it? Well, there it is right there on the other graphic. You can actually see the evaporator in the case duct system. The heater core and the evaporator, depending on the temperature doors, is going to depend on where the air flows. So if you want it to go through the evaporator, that hot air from the car is going to jump onto that evaporator. They're going to take a ride and get rid of the hot, and thus you're going to feel cooler. But Josh, it really doesn't do it justice there on a graphic, man. I wish I had a case duct system.
Oh, what do you know? I spent 3 hours upside down and got one out of a car for you.
Boy, you are a trooper when it comes to Tech Garage. You guys want to see this. It's actually located up under the driver's side or the passenger side. This one in case in the passenger side of the vehicle. So you are upside down, and it's located in the car. So not too easy to get to. But if we pull this cover off right here, you can see the first component I talked about. This is actually the heater core. If I take the heater core out, and below that, with coolant dripping all over Josh's head upside down and everything else, bam, there it is. There's our evaporator located in the case duct system, usually inside the car. There's some old school ones that are outside the car. You can see on the truck, the old pickup truck, it's actually located outside there, right up under the actual bulkhead of the car. But Josh, you got a couple of tricks for us.
First trick I'm going to tell you is called a field test, okay? And what that is you just go to the lines. This is going to be at your bulkhead. So the whole point of the AC system is really to get this evaporator cold so I can transfer the heat from the cab to the evaporator to take it outside. So if my lines are cold, that means my AC system is working how it's supposed to. If my lines are cold and inside the cab still blowing warm air, that lets me know it's not my AC system, it's something internally with a blend door or something like that going on that's not functioning correctly.
You can also shoot the temperature. It should change a little bit, right?
Right, you can take a pyrometer, shoot the lines. The lines go, one line going in is going to be cold. It's going to go through the evaporator. The evaporator is going to take on heat, so the line coming out will be less cold.
So the whole point is, once again, we're taking the heat from inside the car, it's taking a ride on the refrigerant to the outside, and we're throwing it away. Speaking of taking a ride, we need to take a ride.
Tell you what, John, this truck is fixed. These brakes feel much better. They're stopping a lot better.
You're gonna put me through the windshield.
Sorry about that.
And Dave, you know, it was perfect when you did the bed-in process. That's huge. Everybody wants to stop 50 times because they got new brakes. Don't do that. What you want to do is you actually want to go about 35 miles an hour, come to a stop with some moderate braking, but don't come to a complete stop. Speed up to 55, do it again a few times. Kind of a harder stop, but once again, don't come to a complete stop. Then you can go 4 or 5 times and drive it. Drive it for at least 5 or 10 minutes. Let it cool down without stopping. You don't want that resin to transfer over to the rotors or kind of build up on those pads. And then just park it, let it cool for an hour, man. These things will be in tip-top shape. Dave?
John, I think this is a perfect time for a road trip. We'll keep this thing rolling.
Hey, I'll tell you what, let's go eat lunch. We'll leave the crew there. And hey, you guys join us next week. There'll be plenty more Tech Garage brought to you by rockauto.com.
Production assistance provided by Chipola College in Marianna, Florida. Chipola was founded in 1947 and it was recently ranked among the top 3 community colleges in the United States.